Strasburg. Yeah, it's pretty good. Nicknamed the Road to Paradise, Strasburg Road is a living museum committed to preserving authentic steam railroading, serving passengers for over a century and a half. Passengers can hop aboard pristinely restored passenger cars for a 9-mile round trip, giving the riders an experience as if they were riding in 1910. Strasburg Railroad gives you, the rider, an opportunity to step back in time to when the world turned at a slower pace and steam was king. Located in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania, just west of Philadelphia, we find the town of Strasburg, a small town that was cut off from the Philadelphia and Columbia Railroad. Not one to be cut off from the rest of the country, on June 9, 1832, the Strasburg Railroad, running between Strasburg and Paradise, Pennsylvania, was born. Operations began with horses, but in 1851, the first steam locomotive was bought by the railroad, the William Penn, a 420 type steam locomotive bought by the railroad from the Philadelphia and Columbia. The William Penn served the railroad for 14 years, until the railroad bought several new-to-them locomotives from the Pennsylvania Railroad. Over the next several decades, the railroad served the town well, until 1901, when the electric trolley reached Strasburg. With decreasing ridership, the railroad suspended passenger operations indefinitely. That wasn't all for the little railroad. After realizing steam operations were too expensive, the railroad bought its only brand new locomotive, a 20-ton Plymouth, bought in 1928. This made the railroad one of the first to completely abolish steam operations. But, through the next several decades, the amount of freight traffic over the railroad started to dwindle, and after Hurricane Hazel in the early 1950s, the railroad prepared to file for abandonment. Not wanting the railroad to be abandoned and forgotten, local rail fans Henry Long and Donald Hollick wanted to save the line. The two gentlemen and several other rail enthusiasts bought shares for the line, which costed $20,000. On November 1st, 1958, the Strasburg Railroad was saved from the cutter's torch. With the Strasburg saved from abandonment, a lot of work was needed to stabilize the line for operations. After Hurricane Hazel in 1954 and neglect to the line, the right-of-way was almost non-existent. The shareholders worked weekends and holidays restoring the line, and on January 1959, after acquiring a wooden passenger car bought from the Reading Company, they ran the first public passenger train, kickstarting a new era of the Strasburg Railroad. After the first passenger excursions, ridership increased, and more passenger cars were added to the roster. But the original railroad station was starting to become too small, so the East Petersburg station was relocated by the railroad and moved to the outskirts of town. With the increase of riders and the trains getting longer, the 20-ton Plymouth was becoming unable to pull the longer trains. In true railfan fashion, the railroad wanted to bring back steam operations. In the summer of 1960, they found an 060 switcher built by Baldwin in 1908 for the Grand Trunk Railroad. The railroad bought Canadian National 7312, and she was moved to the new East Strasburg station. After finalizing paperwork, a new coat of paint, and a renumber to 31, the locomotive returned to service Labor Day weekend 1960, making the 31 the first steam locomotive to return to service by a tourist railroad. But, in addition to the railroad getting a steam locomotive, they needed a way to store its locomotives from the elements. In November 1960, the railroad completed a 2-stall engine house, giving the railroad a much-needed place to maintain its vintage steam locomotive. Meanwhile, not wanting to use steam for the railroad's small freight operation and for use as a backup, the Strasburg Railroad leased and eventually bought a 44-tonner in 1961. Pennsylvania Railroad 9331, later renumbered 33, was acquired by the railroad and pressed into service. But, because multiple is always better than one, Strasburg went looking for another steam locomotive. They found an 040 Camelback type steam locomotive built by Baldwin in 1909. X-Reading 1187 was bought by the railroad in 1962 and was pressed into service the following year. But only 6 weeks later, after finding that it was hard to fire the locomotive on bituminous coal and the locomotive not having enough steaming capacity, the locomotive was reassigned to switching tasks around East Strasburg. Still needing a second steam locomotive, and with the newly formed Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania Railroad 1223 was leased in 1965. Built by the Juniata Shops in 1905, the 1223 was a much-needed addition to the railroad. The railroad grew over the next several years. Passenger trains left almost daily, several times a day, for several years. But in the spring of 1967, the railroad bought a 210 Decapod built by Baldwin in 1926 for the Great Western Railroad. Number 90 was acquired and pressed into service, making 90 the newest, largest, and most powerful locomotive in the railroad's roster, even to this day. That same year, after partaking in an excursion for the Baltimore chapter of the NHRS, Camelback number 4 was retired and placed on static display. In the summer of 1968, 20th Century Fox requested the railroad to lend them a steam locomotive and 4 wooden passenger cars to take part in the movie Hello, Dolly. The railroad repainted 1223, 3 wooden passenger cars, and rebuilt an open-air observation car into New York Central and Hudson Railroad colors. Once filming was completed, they were returned to the railroad. To further enhance the visitor's experience and the want to increase ridership, the railroad built a passing siding between the crossings at Cherry Hill and Carpenter's Road in the late 1960s. This passing siding is remarkable for being one of the only places in the U.S. where 2 regularly scheduled steam-powered passenger trains pass each other. It's also at this location where Picnic Grove was installed, allowing passengers to get off the train to enjoy the Dutch countryside. The next locomotive to join Strasburg's roster was an ex-Canadian National 260 Moog built in 1910 by the Canadian Locomotive Works. Number 89 was acquired in March of 1973, and after heavy repairs were made after being stranded during Hurricane Agnes, the locomotive entered service. Notably, the locomotive faced forward in the east direction for 1 week until the turntable at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania was completed, allowing the locomotive to turn around. By the early 1980s, maintaining multiple steam locomotives required a greater shop capacity. In March of 1983, the railroad built an 85,000 square foot restoration shop for their own locomotives and other railroads' locomotives. One of the first locomotives to be restored in the new back shop was Pennsylvania Railroad 442 Atlantic Type 7002, owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum. The 7002 entered service on the Strasburg and ran passenger trains on and off the railroad. In 1986 and 1989, the 7002 and 1223 ran excursions on the Amtrak main line. But in late 1989, after finding that the firebox walls were too thin, the 7002 and 1223 were retired and returned to the museum. Down to operational steam locomotives, the railroad was in desperate need of a 4th locomotive. In 1991, the railroad bought a 480 Mastodon-type locomotive built by Baldwin in 1906 for the Norfolk and Western Railroad. After a 2-year rebuild, 475 was pressed into service, and she quickly proved herself as a vital member of the railroad's roster. An additional locomotive was bought in March of 1998. The railroad bought and restored an 060T built by the H.K. Porter Company in 1917 for the Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal. After being fully restored and converted to burn coal, 15 entered service. But the railroad found that the locomotive couldn't carry enough water to complete the run to Paradise and back. In August of 1991, Britt Allcroft, creator of the TV series Thomas and Friends, requested a locomotive and a set of passenger cars to take part in real-world scenes of Thomas and the Magic Railroad. The railroad agreed under the one condition that they could rebuild 15 into a life-size replica of the cheeky blue tank engine we all know and love. Allcroft agreed, and the railroad relettered 475 and 3 passenger cars into the fictional Indian Valley paint scheme. After the movie, the equipment was relettered to its original design, and 15 became a vital member of the railroad's Day Out with Thomas events. With the railroad's freight operations serving the local area, more and more freight needed to be moved, and the 33 was beginning to become too small for the tasks of pulling large amounts of freight. In 2009, the railroad bought an SW8 switcher, and it was pressed into service. Like 33, the 8618 was primarily used for freight operations, but it is also used as a backup in case anything happens to the steam locomotives. The railroad, which had grown over the past 60 years, was starting to reach the weight limit of the one and only bridge. Wanting to bring more and heavier freight, the railroad replaced the bridge with a replica of a 19th century one in 2011. It was also at this time that the switchback-style runaround was replaced with a more traditional runaround in Paradise. It was also at this time that the 33 was sold. In 2016, an 18,000 square foot expansion was added to the back shop, giving the railroad more space for outside work. In 2019, in collaboration with the Virginia Museum of Transportation, the Norfolk and Western 611 visited the railroad. The 611 and the newly rebuilt 475 ran several special event excursions through the month of October. The 611 left and normal operations resumed. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the railroad suspended passenger operations in the spring of 2020. But that summer, it reopened and continued running operations as normal. From 2021 through 2023, the 611 visited the railroad again, running passenger trains most weekends. It was also during this visit that the 611 received some much-needed maintenance by the skilled employees of the railroad. Today, Strasburg is not only renowned for its excursions, but its world-class restoration work. Projects have included full rebuilds on Walt Disney World Railroad locomotives, the restoration of Union Pacific 4014's drivers, and the ongoing restoration of Chesapeake and Ohio 614, cementing Strasburg as a primary destination for steam locomotive preservation. From one of America's earliest tourist railroads to the global leader in steam restoration, the Strasburg Railroad remains a living symbol of steam preservation. For rail fans everywhere, it truly is the road to paradise.